And first story, and government's decision to raise a €2 million bond to offset the energy sector legacy debt has attracted criticism from the New Patriotic Party. Communications Director of the New Patriotic Party, Nana Komia, says adding to the country's debt stock is not a good idea.
Speaking on the Saturday edition of TV3's New Day, Director of Communications of the NPP, Nana Komia, said the bad nature of the economy and fluctuation of the cedi has resulted in the current debt.
This government has been operating a tight monetary policy since 2013, after the reckless deficit of 2012. Now, in that process, you have the cedi value on a yo-yo. If it's a result of policy, and the policy is consistent, you will not have this yo-yo. You went for cocoa loan of $1 billion, and then 1.6, and then you went for a bond. That's what you did. If it runs out, the cedi will start falling again, because your activity that will generate economic activity and dollars is vacant.
But member of the NDC's legal team, lawyer Abraham Amaliba, in response said the current energy debt is an accumulation of debts from previous governments, including that of the NPP. He says it is wrong for the NPP to create the impression that these debts were accrued only under the NDC.
As a result of this loan, we're going to be imposed with more taxes. That's not true. The minister has indicated that the very same tax that we have, which is the energy levy tax, is what will be assigned to the Eurobond. So we are not going to be imposed with fresh taxes so as to be paying the Eurobond. And so for me, the matter has rested.
Political analyst Joe Jackson, who was also on the show, said Ghana is caught between the rock and a hard place, as the decision of whether or not to go for further loans is not a clear-cut one, as BDCs and energy sector players already owe the banks so much it threatens the ability of these banks to stay in business.
I'm happy the Honourable Minister admitted there was a loan, because every loan is backed by receivables. I'm also happy that the Honourable Minister is on the road to admitting that he's between a rock and a very hard place.
Meanwhile, Deputy Finance Minister Ato Forson has debunked suggestions that servicing the energy sector debt will add to the country's debt stock. And he said the consolidated fund will not be used to refinance these debts. According to Ato Forson, an improving external sector and better performing trade deficit is what has resulted in the relative stability of the cedi against the dollar in recent times.
Energy sector, particularly the power sector, VRA, ECG, Gradeco, owns Ghanaian banks and other foreign banks to the tune of almost about $1.5 billion. And these are debts that dates back many, many years ago. I mean, talking of 20 years back. These debts, particularly those that are owned by Ghanaian banks, are affecting critical sectors of the economy. I say this because today these banks are seeing a huge performing loans on the back of some of this SOE debt. We have seen that the banks are now lacking liquidity, and for that matter, they are struggling to lend to certain critical sectors of the economy, particularly the SOE, the SME sector. So what we intend to do is for us to use the receivables from the energy sector levies to refinance this existing debt. I've heard some of your panelists trying to say that obviously this is going to add to public debt, but that is not the case. We are not going to use the consolidated fund to refinance this debt. These debts are already sitting in the books of the bank. What we are only trying to do is to assign the receivables from the energy sector levies, which is approximately 100 million Ghana cedis, to the banks, and then refinance that debt. That is actually affecting the financial sector in a way that some liquidity will be available to these banks, in a way that the banks will not record this aspect as bad. And therefore, the NPLs that ideally they would have made provisions against them will no longer be there.